Start?
Aye.
Oh. Hi, I'm Johnny Strike, Talk Russo. I'm broadcasting live the Reading RCTV studios of Massachusetts, USA, the world. You never know who's listening or watching. We're only live tonight, and after tonight, the program will be rebroadcasted on the RCTV schedule that you can get through a computer going on to the program schedule that we have at the Town Center, Town of Reading website. I have a website also, which I'm uploading some of the programs I have, and eventually I'll have them all up there. But it takes time and also takes money. If anyone wants to make a donation, you're welcome to. The website is called johnnystraighttalk.com. It's on the bottom of the screen here, not right at this moment. Several weeks ago, actually 7, we had a couple of guests here talking about a program called End of Nuclear Power, as you can see at the bottom of your screen. We had 2 guests here, Dr. David Williams and also Ron Daddario. And at the end of the program, we said, well, you know, what's next? So after we had a discussion here about 15 minutes beyond the program, we decided to have another program to discuss what is next. And this is who we have here tonight. Again, we have Dr. David Williams here to my left, and we also have Ron Daddario. Dr. Williams has worked as a research scientist. He's got a PhD in chemistry. Ron, everyone knows Ron in town. He's I'd say the Father Earth of Reading. Okay, you have Mother Earth, you can be Father Earth.
John, I'm not that old, but you know, that's old.
The Mother Earth, well, there's another group of women who they're welcome to come anytime. They could play the Mother God, Mother Earth. So anyway, the program now will talk about what's next. I mean, we had this situation there in Fukushima, Japan, the meltdown of a nuclear power plant. We had quite a few people die. Actually, they did die, but the 20,000 report, it was not the result of the nuclear contamination. It was a tsunami that killed 99% of all these people. There are a few people that may be dying or will because of nuclear radiation. And during the Chernobyl incident, according to Dr. Williams, he said about 30 have died so far. So we have to understand the perception there is that nuclear power is going to cause a lot of deaths. That's not been proven by 2 major nuclear power plant meltdowns at this point in time. So I'll turn over the program to both Dr. Williams and also Ron here, and I'll be the host. Ron is taking a position that we should eliminate nuclear power plants as soon as we can. And actually what's happening worldwide, Germany, they have decided within the next 10 years to actually phase out all the nuclear power plants. That's a major move by a major country. There's been no other country that has taken that position. Dr. Williams prefers to continue on with nuclear power, and it's mainly because it has essentially a 0 footprint in terms of CO2, but there's a lot of other issues. But they have 2 different opinions, but tonight we're going to talk about strictly what do we do, whether we do end nuclear power or not. Gentlemen.
We do agree that the energy is going to be more expensive and that we need to do something about it, and this probably will be in terms of reducing the carbon footprint and perhaps also the nuclear. So what is going to be the outcome of this? We probably are going to have to increase efficiency and cut back on our usage of power. So that's where we are today, I think.
Well, our premise in coming here today, and our premise is that we have climate change happening. Most of the world's climatologists agree on this. It's not something you hear so much. It's sort of politically incorrect to talk about climate changes here in the United States. It tends to be, even people who believe in it tend to use other terms so they don't have to get into that debate. But the bottom line, as far as the physics and chemistry are concerned, is that our climate is changing. We are experiencing climate disruption now in different ways, from drought, from deluge, from stronger winds, from perhaps stronger tornadoes, stronger hurricanes. We have actual temperature rise of 0.8 degrees Celsius. Another 0.6 is guaranteed to come because of the CO2 we've already put in. That brings us to about 1.4 centigrade. Some of the people have said that anything above 2 degrees centigrade is going to be really disastrous, and that 2 degrees centigrade itself is going to be pretty heavy. It's going to be a pretty heavy burden on our kids and our grandkids. The other thing I've been reading is that normally they've been talking about this is going to happen in 100 years. And what's happened in my latest reading is that this is speeded up. It's no longer 100 years. We're looking at maybe 2020, 2030, and even right now, things are happening. So that's our premise, that we have to do something, and we have a window. We have a window of maybe 10 years to get things going in a very big way, in a way that's going to involve some sacrifice for everybody, especially those of us in the United States, because we are the major, well, we are pretty much the major polluters, although China may have surpassed us in total as far as a per capita usage. We're still king of the hill.
So your plan is, in terms of alternatives, as we phase out, which you're advocating, phase out the nuclear power, which has essentially very little carbon footprint. What alternatives are you going to? Are you advocating that you phase out one and increase the other at the same time?
Not increasing fossil fuel usage.
Yes.
We have to decrease both, probably.
Okay.
So tonight we're really looking at just at what David said, nuclear phase out. My personal preference, but we're looking at phasing out fossil fuel, and we're talking about coal, we're talking about natural gas, and we're talking about coal, natural
Solar.
Gas, and
Petroleum, gasoline.
and petroleum and oil. Okay,
Sure.
especially
Those are the
gasoline.
ones, right.
So that's what we're looking at, and the question is, okay, if you're going to do that, you're going to phase out this huge amount. That might be like 88% of all our energy comes from those three sources. Well, what's going to go in its place? That's our thing. Now,
I would say that coal is mostly carbon and goes to CO2. Methane and gases have more hydrogen, and we don't worry about the water that is coming out. So it's better to burn gas than it is coal.
yeah, petroleum would be better than gas. Petroleum would be better than coal, and natural gas would be better than petroleum or coal.
Yeah.
First slide. Dave, you want to talk about this? Slide number 1A. Miguel?
Okay. This is a Human Development Index slide, and it's been developed by the United Nations kind of as a standard of living index used to distribute aid to underdeveloped countries. And you see here that health is shown by the life expectancy, education by the number of years of schooling, and the national product as a standard of living, and the total is a Human Development Index. So I think we should then go to the next slide, 1B, and we'll see where we are relative to other countries. Ron, would you like to take over on that one?
This slide is a key slide, and if any of you watched our last show, you might remember it. Now, if you look at the red, that's the amount of energy we use. And the United States is all the way over to the right. We use a pretty high number of energy, if you look at it, and it's in
Red per capita.
Gigajoules per capita. So we're way up there. The standard of living, or our Human Development Index, is the green. So you could see we're right up there. But now if you look left, you'll see Japan, you see Germany, you see France, Italy. The green line, the standard of living, or our Human Development Index, pretty much the same. And yet the energy use is half. So part of what I think David and I are going to say is that we can do a lot of saving on energy just by, while maintaining our standard of living. So that's one key. That would come under efficiency and conservation. Next slide, please. 2. This is just a quick look at energy consumption. That 31% is industrial, and you can see it's not too far apart between 4 general areas. Next slide, please. David, you want to?
We've sort of talked about this before, but for electrical power, which is becoming more and more important, and 40% of our total energy, most of this comes at present from coal, and that is very dirty and carbon, primarily carbon source. We need to increase this in some manner, and nuclear power is probably not a practical answer. It's not an answer which Japan and Germany presently want, and they already have a less energy, have better energy efficiencies than we do. Hydroelectric is now only 7% of ours. Other renewables like wind and so forth are 2%, and petroleum for electrical energy is very, very small.
Okay, and one thing to note is that 51% of coal actually causes more than 70% of the pollution. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, hey, go back one slide, Michael, just for a second. So if you look at it with 51, 21, 17, you're looking at 89%. 89% of our energy for electricity is what we need to cut out. And we're looking to cut that down maybe I don't know, maybe like 20% or so by 2020, and maybe by 2050, they're looking at an 80% reduction. Now that's in the electrical side, but we're talking total energy. So next slide. How are we going to do it?
Oh, we feel that the nuclear and fossil fuels has to be decreased, and that energy conservation is certainly something which other countries are being able to do, and efficiency we can, and also other countries can gain at least 17%. Now renewables will be wind, solar, and so forth, and also biofuels and geothermal, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. More minutes. Yeah.
All right. If you look at conservation, I mean, Michael, maybe you might keep that slide on just for a second. If you look at conservation, 11%. All right. Do you think if you had your Reading light bill and you were looking at kilowatt hours, do you think you could reduce your light bill 11%? If you had, 11 hours, 11 kilowatt hours, could you take 1.1 hour off of that? Can you I think you can. I think you could do it. I know I could by, whether you're turning off the lights, changing light bulbs, lowering your thermostat one way or another. Efficiency the same way. There are 100 things out there now in the United States. Even refrigerators have done it. If your refrigerator is like more than 10 years old, they say the newer ones have 40% more efficiency. So there are a ton of things that can be done in terms of efficiency, even in industry, where they are, and the one thing in industry that they can do in power plants is what they call combined energy. What do we call that? CHIP. It's combined heat and power, where a lot of that heat today in our power plants, in our industrial factories, a lot of the heat goes up the chimney. What they want to do is take that heat that they've already used for certain things, take that heat and use it to generate electricity or use it to generate heat. You could heat the surrounding town. There's a whole bunch of things. There are a ton of things that we can do. America is just, in the world, is loaded with ideas waiting to happen if we can get through this roadblock. Next slide. Please.
Okay. Well, other countries are seeing the very high increase in energy prices. And if we're looking at $100 for a barrel of gasoline, then other countries are looking at about 2 or 3 times the value of gasoline per unit in terms of gallons. United Kingdom, Japan, France, they're looking at around $10 per gallon, and they have efficiency that matches this. We don't, because we don't see the need to do such things. If you go over to Copenhagen, you'll see that there are a lot of bicycles, there are a lot of Vespas, and they're on the main streets. We don't need to do that, so we're not doing it. We've seen cars that Ron now has a Prius. I don't see the economic benefit to it, but we need to see that benefit.
So the price of gasoline that we pay is actually way under its actual cost, and the cost of the gasoline is in climate change, in pollution, in asthma, and all kinds of effects that are not really seen in that $4 price per gallon.
It's been estimated that the real price is closer to $13.
The real price of gas, if you count in all of the problems and you eliminate the subsidies, and we pay actually that cost. And if that cost went up, then people would tend to use the Vespa that Dave was talking about, or the bicycle, or we might really have a huge push for public transportation.
Yes.
That you find in Europe. Next slide, please.
If I can interrupt, the program's halfway through. Usually some people are just surfing, and I'd like to make a comment about what the subjects were here. We're talking about alternatives to nuclear power. The worst polluter at this point in time is coal. We have petroleum-based products is second worst, and the best of the group is gases. Now, energy consumption, which is rather interesting, I guess the UN proposed this just chart. They're the ones who had the basis for the chart with the
Human Development Index. That's their index.
The UN had prepared this human development chart, which indicates that the U.S. is actually no higher than other major world economies, at least in terms of Europe, Japan, and other kinds of countries like that. Twice as much of our energy is being used, while they have the same degree of development, human development. I don't know what the data is in terms of what the criteria was for it, but anyway. The last thing was in terms of alternatives to nuclear fuel, what can you do? And that is we have conservation, which could be as much as 11%. We also have efficiencies that we can attain, which is about 17%. And then you have renewables, which is about another 10%. So that's a summary of what we've spoken about. Now it's all yours, guys.
Next slide.
Over the years, we haven't seen much improvement in our cars in terms of efficiency. Back when we had the Model T, we were getting about 14 miles per gallon. And then cars got more efficient and bigger. And so by 1973, we were down to 12 miles per gallon. And then we had the CAF standards, but people began to see that they could buy SUVs, so all vehicles didn't change very much. And so until we get a carbon tax or something equivalent to that, we probably are not going to get much efficiency because we are simply not that interested in saving money. We don't see it.
Next slide. Now here's what we can do, really quick. We consume more gasoline than the next 20 countries combined. U.S. average miles per gallon, all cars 20. Toyota Prius hybrid, this is from personal experience, 44 average. If I have a good day, I can crack 50. Average mile per gallon for a plug-in hybrid, which means for the first 40 miles or so, you're strictly on battery. So local driving, you'd be strictly on battery. You'd be seeing about 150 miles according to the people from Chevy Volt. And then if you get an all-electric, you're going to see infinity. And in terms of gasoline, now you have to remember the electric vehicle is the electric motor is 80% efficient, the gas engine is 20% efficient. So you're going to do quite well. And they say the average, if you had an all-electric vehicle, the price of electricity would be the equivalent of about 75 cents to $1 a gallon.
When you said your car is producing 44 miles per gallon, and you said it kicks it up to 50, is that when Maureen gets behind the car and pushes it?
Okay. I don't make her push it that often. I mean, on occasion I do. Maureen, if you're watching.
Well, you get the second benefit. You do have exercise, you know.
Yeah. I need it more than her. I should be out there pushing. So hey, if you look at that slide one more time, I want to just give you one other shot here. If you take my Prius, right, and you make it light, you take all the whatever kind of steel or whatever, and you lighten it up with the new carbon fiber, you can double that. to 88 miles per gallon. So, I mean, then if you put that on a plug-in hybrid, you know, now you go from 150 to, I don't know what the number would be. But I'm saying that that's on the shelf now. So if you're considering your grandkids and you want to have a world that's kind of stable in terms of the environment, you know, maybe it's worth a little sacrifice. Maybe it's not going to pay you back in 5 years or 7 years, but maybe it's going to pay back your kids or your grandkids that don't have to live in a world that's getting really hard to live in. Next slide.
If you'd like to make a call, you can call the number at the bottom of your screen, 1-781-944-8888 at any time during the program. We have another 10 minutes. If you have any questions you'd like to
David and I, anybody who calls in, we've upped the ante. We will take you to the Swiss, what's it, Swiss Cafe?
Cafe, okay.
The Swiss Cafe at the Depot. We pay for the drink and the pastry. So if you're brave enough to call in, we're willing to
So you're going
fork it out.
from the Dunkin' Donuts to the cafe.
We've raised it from Dunkies to the Swiss Cafe, so
I'll be there.
call in. Next slide, Mike.
I think, why don't you take this one?
Okay, look, we talk about banning the bulb. By the way, Cuba is one country that I know that's on CFLs. They have banned the incandescent light bulb. But 75% saving on going from an old light bulb to CFLs. I think most people have done that. If you haven't, get on the bandwagon and get it done. LEDs are coming in. They're in a lot of the flashlights and things like that. Even greater savings. If you have the tube fluorescents, you go to the advanced fluorescent lights, you're going to, that 20%, I wasn't sure in that, we weren't sure, but that's low. It's actually about 30, 34%. So there's a whole, and that's, lighting is like, I'm not sure, but it might be 20%, 30% of our electrical use. So we could cut that, you know, at least in half, really quickly.
There's no question. In fact, I have 2 candles here ready to be put into use
Thank
next
you.
time around.
Thank you. Next slide, because I know we're running, that time is running out here.
There's a lot of things in terms of recycling which we can do. Certainly, bottled water is one of the things which takes a lot of energy, and we could certainly decrease this. Our water from the tap in Reading is perfectly good. We could refill bottles if we wanted to, and we could go to reusable bottles, aluminum. You've mentioned appliances before, and IT equipment could be recycled much more efficiently than it is at the present time.
We call it no waste. No waste, zero waste.
There's also the extractables. I'm not sure if they're using any plastics that have the bisphenol A, which is a constituent of some plastics. I don't recall, but that's another reason to consider that. In fact, I use a stainless steel bottle.
Okay. Well, the bottled water, it should be banned probably. They say our Reading water is pretty good, and a lot of the water we have out of the tap is actually tested more often than the water you get in the bottle.
We don't have
Michael,
too many people
next one.
falling over.
Our appliances not designed for disassembly and reuse. Europeans paying up front for disassembly and recycling of toxic materials and IT technology. That's something we should do, so that appliance is, we will pay up front for them to disassemble, reuse, etc. And many restaurants, I mean, if you go to our fast food restaurants, almost everything is just in the trash, whether it's plastic. I have a personal idea, and it's walk in and take out. You take out everything you can. If you've got a plastic container, take it home and recycle it at home. If you've got a plastic, don't put it in the trash. And go up to the manager and ask them, are they going to recycle? When are they going to recycle? And more of us, yeah, does it mean we may have to pay a little more in the beginning? It may be, but consider it a gift to your grandchildren.
Obviously, it's a cost associated with this problem there. Otherwise, they would have gone to industrial recycling.
Yeah, and I think it's an easy thing, John. It's a high, you know, it may not cost them that much, but it's like they got to have another barrel and this and that. But I think it's got to be something, it's got to be standard operating procedure. So if they don't recycle it, take it home. Those plastic things are reusable. Clean them out. When you have a meal and people are going home, you want them to take some extra pie,
Sure.
You've got a container. Next slide. Okay. I mean, geothermal would just be quick. It's underground. Sometimes you can go way down and you can get that kind of steam that you might have in Iceland and Finland and or in our Midwest, etc. And then there's the other kind of geothermal that goes down about 10 feet, and it's an average temperature of about 53 degrees. So in the wintertime, you put a pipe down there for your house. So if it's 3 degrees out, you put that pipe in, the water comes up at 53. Now you only have to heat that to 68.
With a heat pump.
With a heat pump.
Yeah.
And if you're in a warm, like now, and it's about 78, 80, that water comes up at 53. So it's cool. And with a heat pump, a reverse heat pump, you end up cooling. So it's kind of a freebie. It's something that there are a bunch of units. We saw 600,000, and we need more. And that's where our building codes need to change and get more severe in terms of insulation and things like that.
For cooling, you will need to remove the water. That's why it's not practical at this point, but because you do need to remove water.
Next slide, please. Renewable wind.
A lot of wind is available, but it's not always available where you want it. And the same is true of solar. But if the wind is blowing someplace, and if you had a good system of renewable transportation for this at high kilowatt systems, you could be able to use wind more efficiently. Or if you had a good system of renewable and storage, you'd be able to use it more efficiently.
Right, next. Okay, next slide. Solar. Every hour we've got enough to equal the world's annual energy needs. Of course, that includes sun over the oceans and Mount Everest, so we're not going to get that. But with 100 square miles, we could produce enough electricity to power the U.S. So you're looking out in Arizona, where that could be possible, but as David said, we need these high transmission lines. We need to redo our high-powered lines throughout the United States. The ones we have now are really not sufficient, where they're subject to blackouts. We need to redo that system, just the way we redid the highway system in the 50s. We have a system for our electrical conduction that's similar to the roads pre-interstates. So we got to bring our cable transmission lines into the interstate situation, and that would really work out well. We could bring power from the southwest and the wind, and maybe wind, when the sun's really out in the morning or in the afternoon, hot as living blazes, that's when the AC's on. That's when we got the electricity. And that normally when the sun's out that much, there's not much wind. But at night when the sun goes down, the wind tends to pick up. So it's going to be a combination of wind, solar, geothermal, and maybe a few other things. Next slide, please.
Just a comment, one of the areas which limits the use of these two is got to be with storage of this energy, obviously.
Yeah.
Wind and solar are highly dependent on physical conditions.
Sure.
One company here locally in Tingsboro is called Beacon. That's the stock ticker number. I know I invest in a company, and it's a speculative stock, but they make flywheels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And flywheels are designed to handle the difference in frequency of this power so that they can bridge this issue about when you don't have enough power, you have the power, and then it all of a sudden needs to be stored. So in any case, we enjoyed talking to you about this. We have about 30 seconds more.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything else, Ron?
Hey, we're almost there. Yeah, well, John was saying on how we store it. There's also, compressed air. Oh, wow, okay. If you go back one, Michael, maybe we got a second. But here are some of the things, smart grid. We're doing that in Reading.
Notice you have flywheels.
Rechargeable battery flywheel.
Great.
And
Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for coming. It's great to hear what's next. We enjoyed the presentation, and you're welcome to call another time, or at least give the office here a call.
John, thank you for having David and I. I think we're probably off, but
think
thank
we're
you
off.
for having us.
You're welcome.
We appreciate
That
it.
was it, 7:30.
Okay.
Remember what I said?
We almost made it. We had one
Yeah.
slide to go.
You always can, unless you do this regularly, you can always say that it's always have to be compressed.
Yeah.
And you always have more than information, more than enough.
Yeah.
And we
It
tend to
worked
figure-
out. It
Yeah,
worked out
that's
almost
good.
perfect.
That's great, yeah.
Worked out almost perfect.
I didn't ask too much, which is good, because that way they would kept it, but I just try to make it a little amusing, yeah.
All right, John, that was good.
Pushing.
That was good. That
Yeah.
was good.
The flywheel was interesting because that's the very short term.
It
And
is.
rechargeable
In
batteries,
fact, this
perhaps
company,
sodium
yeah,
sulfur batteries
They've
would
been
be.
at it for 10 years, and they're getting a lot of money from the government to pursue this as
Yeah.
a storage alternative to advanced batteries. Batteries are fine,
Well-
but it's
Limited.
they're limited, exactly. And so this flywheel concept, they've demonstrated already in 2 places now, but they have to find out the economics of it. And the stock has got, it used to be $1.30, now it's only 60. Then they had a reverse split and went up to $1.20. It's a speculative stock.
Well, it's a shot.
It is.
But, no, they were,
But you don't need the lithium batteries because you don't need that weight incentive. But
Okay.
you can use sodium sulfur batteries, and I think that they are very practical for a longer term storage than the flywheel. Yeah,
well, they use compressed air,
yeah.
so while the sun's shining, and they'll make extra energy,
No
they,
heat.
they make
Compressed
extra, so they compress air.
Oh, they do,
Yeah, they
okay.
compress the air, and they put it down in shafts, and and then when the sun's down, they release the air.
Oh,
It's
so
1,000
that's-
pounds per square inch.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then they have a small gas heater. They
Yes,
take
right.
that and they heat that a little, just a little, and then it spins a turbine. So
Yeah,
they,
because once you expand it, it's going to cool.
yeah, it'll cool.
From 1,000 pounds to, say,
Yeah.
30 pounds, it's going to
But
cool.
I don't know exactly.
During that time, you run at least a motor.
You're
Yes,
running,
that's
you're
true.
running, you're
That's
spinning
right,
a.
yeah.
You're spinning something.
A turbine that's
Yeah.
spinning a generator, and they'll get additional. The other is molten salt.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They heat
Very
molten
high
salt,
Heat capacity.
and then
very
it
high.
holds the heat.
Yeah.
But I don't think
Tremendous.
they haven't made it like so they actually have 24 hours guaranteed. But if you have the high-power transmission lines all over the place, there's wind blowing somewhere, as David said. There's sun's out, or there's wind blowing, and then you have maybe a geothermal base, a low base
But
for the
remember, this
base
stuff
load.
here, we're talking about solar and wind it's less than 2%. Which is
Yeah.
very low to try to,
Oh, where are we starting from?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're starting from zero.
yeah, and almost zero, not
No,
quite.
it's-
But
yeah,
it's
it's like
impressive
zero.
to have, 1.5%, 2% in
Well,
both of those.
And
So what-
Japan thinks that they're going to get most of their energy that they're not going to get from nuclear from the wind in the Sea of Japan.
Yeah.
They want to go from 50 back down to 20%, and they think they're going to get it from wind.
Are they going to put these fans out on barges, or are they going to put them on the property? Because, Japan is a very small
Yeah.
island
No, in the Sea of Japan.
in the sea, in the sea
In the sea,
itself.
yeah.
Okay, just like they have the fans, or at least the North Slope in Norway, we have a lot of oil wells, so it's just going to be
Yeah.
like an oil
Yeah,
rig. in
they
a
know how
sense.
to do that.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Certainly.
It's like,
And we think we know how to do it off the Cape of
Yeah.
Cape
Yeah,
Cod.
well, they haven't started with that, but they're going ahead.
Yeah, they're going.
Yeah.
they'll be able to supply the Cape and the islands with
It'd be more
electricity.
difficult for any enemy to come aboard, They got all these obstructions on the ocean, the ship can only be so big,
Well, if you kind of use a missile on a nuclear power plant, you got trouble.
You got
You use a missile on the wind power, nobody cares.
you're right.
A couple of guys might die, no one cares. No radiation in the air.
Right. The nuclear bomb is,
How much of a dent can we make in this chart here if we use those alternative methods?
Well, go to the next one. Go to the next one. Well, this is electrical energy, so this is kind of more where we're shooting in a way, in one sense.
so the 40% will compose of all those.
Yeah, so, you can make a big dent. And the thing is that once the economy of scale, which means you start building things, you start producing them cheaper and cheaper as you come up to scale, as you increase more and more. And once the industry knows this is it, this is the path,
Yeah.
you're going to see there's so much innovation out there if you turn it loose. and they know this is the path, this is it, and they go for it. So, I mean, look, Michael, we either do it or we're gonna find this planet uninhabitable. That's my take.
Well,
So I don't know
but
what the
not
choice
fast enough
is.
as you like, but
I'm sorry?
you're moving ahead in that direction. It's just not how fast we go there.
The thing on the fast is an important part of the equation now.
Yeah.
It's not just moving there. And it's no longer, well, this is gonna hurt the economy. How much did Katrina hurt the economy? For like 300, I don't know how much, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you say, well, we can't afford this, I mean, who can afford not doing
It's
this?
cheaper to move everybody out of the.
We're gonna move everybody out of where? And then you've got,
Than it is to try to rebuild and have the same problem, because that wall, that levee is not good for a 6 tornado, whatever that rating is.
well, it's like, John, they say rebuild, you know, we got nuclear power plants. We almost had one, the one up, caught fire out in, what is it,
What,
Arizona?
3 Mile?
No, I'm talking about the nuclear weapon plant in Los Alamos.
Oh, that, I didn't know that.
Well, they had the forest fire.
Oh, yes,
It
I know
started-
that, yes,
they-
right.
It came
They were
within
getting
50
close.
feet. 50
50
feet.
feet?
They put it 50 feet.
Wow.
They got 20,000 to 30,000 barrels of low-grade plutonium waste.
Yeah.
But you don't want that in the air. You don't want that barrel blowing up.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the wind. So,
Well, I didn't know that many trees were around that area. There must be quite
Yeah.
a few trees in
yes.
that area.
it's so dry.
Oh,
And the
it's
thing's like a
terribly
tinder
dry.
box.
Yeah.
And the hotter it gets, that heat sucks the moisture out of the ground. It sucks the moisture out of everything.
Oh, yeah.
So you get you get a little fire, and that thing is roaring.
Yeah,
Well, we didn't get that telephone call that I was looking for saying that,
about the gas prices.
yeah, gasoline prices is hurting our economy, and therefore we've got to decrease our price of energy in order to have our
God,
economy.
it's to burn more
yeah.
coal.
That's the easiest
The higher the
solution.
price, the easier it is to justify what you're doing here. But people are going to unelect the guy who's in the office right now if it continues on.
Well, I would rather see us increase our cost in terms of fossil fuel and decrease our ability to subsidize some of these hydroelectric and wind systems and see what the real cost is.
Including
Well,
ethanol, you know, there's a
Well,
tremendous.
ethanol's a big
That's,
subsidized.
They finally agreed they're going to both, I think the Republicans are going to eliminate that program. They're all
I mean,
buying it,
everybody's
you know,
admitted, Gore's the one who had the swing vote. It had to go to the vice president on that, because it was tied. The
Oh,
vote for ethanol.
Ethanol?
And
Was
he-
it? I didn't remember that.
He voted for it, but at the time, they didn't foresee the unexpected consequence of food, you know?
You know, using
Well,
30% of our corn products, I believe, 30%
Yeah.
is used for this.
Well, they didn't
Therefore,
expect
it
that to
drives up the
continue.
prices.
Yeah.
They expect to be able to use other sources of
Sources,
carbon.
switchgrass, everything
Yeah,
else, but that hasn't
and until
happened.
they do
No,
that,
well,
it's not going to be efficient.
The corn growers and the corn states are
Oh,
not
they love
looking
that.
to, they're not looking to go to switchgrass.
No, not
They
when you
want
have-
corn, and because it's, they'll pay more to use corn as a fuel than for food.
That's right.
But the problem is it raises the corn price,
Ever across the board.
worldwide.
Yeah.
and so even Gore's has come out and really said that was a blunder. Go change it, you know, so hopefully, like you said, maybe they're gonna change that.
Well, because they're going. I mean, this is a private concern. You can't, like, for example, these flywheels, this company, Beacon, is existing, and it would not be in business if it wasn't for the subsidies, like, you know, 20, 30, 50 million dollars they're paying for this company to develop this.
Well, that's okay, but if you had a price of carbon that was real, then maybe they would be in existence.
Yeah.
But
The
you
others
have
wouldn't-
the
if you took the
carbon
subsidies from the
tax.
other and let them pay for the damage they're causing, which is pretty high, then that coal would, you know, the price for the flywheel suddenly might
Yeah,
be in the
it might be
market.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they call them FITs, feed-in tariffs. And a feed-in tariff is something like, okay, you got a new energy with flywheel, you're brand new, and it's costing you 14 cents a kilowatt hour. And they're selling it for 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So the government says, you might be onto something. So we're gonna pay the 6 cents difference So you're gonna sell it for 8 cents. We're gonna give you the 6 for
Don't
3
tell me
years.
that. Right, right. That's basically what they're doing.
See
yeah.
if you can make it work, because you're brand new. Now, I'm for that, but
That's
I'm
what
not
they've
for,
done,
I'm not for like the oil subsidies that,
Yeah,
That's
that-
good.
that's
that go
gotta
on.
go
A
first.
subsidy to get you going, not that there's part of your income.
Yeah, right.
You know? Now, I think sometimes, David, you need a startup that's like faltering, you know, they don't have, that they might need a little help.
Perhaps.
I'm open to that. But they have to know there's a limit. And once entrepreneurs or investment bankers start to see, uh-oh, this looks good, then they're on their own.
Right. That's just like the corn industry, the ethanol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Once you get fed by the government,
it's forever.
almost forever.
Because your congressman, everybody now fights for it.
I'll give you a great case. Sam Donaldson. You remember him?
Yeah, he's a news guy.
Yeah, he was. I think it was ABC or CBS. He had a lamb's wool farm down in Texas. And he made lamb's wool for the Air Force jackets that were used during World War II, the B-17s. They all had these jackets.
Yeah, I
with
know.
special
I kind of know what you mean.
They only eliminated this about 10 years ago.
And they're still making it.
You see what I mean?
Because he had
Because he had a vested interest in this.
And they had a
the guy
congressman, and
who
he's his
voted for
friend.
all these earmarks. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Once you start a government program, it's very tough to
Yeah.
get rid of it. Very tough.
Politically,
There- That's what it is. It's
well, that's why
self-interest.
you've got the coal states. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
David.
They refuse to tax, but they'll be willing to give. And so this increases our deficit, and that can't
Yeah, it increases
continue
that
forever.
deficit.
That's
But
why
they-
you'd be
this is
better off with a
power.
carbon tax and less
Well,
incentives.
that's right.
Yeah. So anyway, John, thanks so much for
All right, you're
having us
welcome.
on.
It went well, guys.
I thought it was good.
Nice. Lots
I
more.
was trying to tell you, because I know we were speeding up, and I wanted you to slow down, don't start, because when you speed up, it's not coming across.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's better to leave things
It's
out.
better to leave things out and
Than to-
explain what we're
That's
doing
right.
and not
Exactly.
worry about it.
Right, yeah. And that's what I do, when I plan a program, I always make sure the last section, the last 20% is stuff that's optional.
Yeah.
It's not central to what I need. And many times, I only can get through a little bit of that before it's time to
Yeah.
end. So that's the best way of doing it.
This all-electric vehicle, there's a company coming into Reading that has this all-electric vehicle, probably has 100 miles. I don't know the number, the name of the company.
E-Cars of New England.
Yeah.
Is that right?
He-
Yeah.
they
A
don't-
lithium
at our-
iron battery good for 100 miles. And then you have to push.
Is this
There is
better
no hybrid.
Is it better than the Volt that they have planned by the GM?
Yes.
In some
Well-
ways it is. It's cheaper than the Volt. The Volt
should
has
be.
gas backup.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
The
does.
Volt can go
Does not.
40 miles on a battery.
Now, you made a comment about the fact that you wouldn't buy this vehicle.
I didn't buy it, yeah, you're right.
And
I looked at
I
it,
didn't want to say anything about
But
it.
it's okay.
What was it?
didn't have enough storage, and it did not make economic sense.
From the
Ron is
standpoint,
more-
most of these cars, the cost of buying them,
Yeah,
the payback is 5, 10 years, if not at all.
Could be. But
so I looked at the numbers,
looked
and
at
Ron
the-
looked at the value.
Yeah.
I looked
to
at
the
them
country.
from
Well,
a-
you
from a
know,
re-
being out
He's
there.
more
using-
altruistic than I
Right,
am.
That's right. But from a strict economic sense, what was the payback for that vehicle?
Yeah, too long.
Well,
And
you
that was
could- you
considering
could-
the fact that
Within a lifetime?
prices, yes,
No, you,
100,000 miles, the lifetime of
yes,
the car?
yeah, in
Okay.
10
John,
years.
when I bought that car, my car was like, it's an '06. It was 21,000 and change. I got a, what was my rebate? That was my rebate, 2,500? I got a big rebate.
Some.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
A big rebate.
Well, yeah,
I mean, decent
10%
rebate.
maybe, yeah,
I can't remember what the rebate was anymore, but it was significant.
yeah.
Now, you can do the math. I mean, I'm basically getting double the mileage, almost, of most cars. David may not. But when I talk 44, I'm talking about average driving.
Yes, okay.
I'm not talking about my best shot when I'm driving to Maine on vacation.
Right.
Most people do not, some of the later cars have, you're reading your mileage all the time.
But
I get
actually, you
30
get
miles
better
per gallon.
You get better mileage in the city than you do on the highway. That's what I've seen these
No,
numbers here.
that's a little misleading, I
It
know,
is.
you see that. But if you're driving, like in Reading only, you're going to Market Basket, and that's not good, because there's a warm-up period.
Oh,
So, and it's like having the choke on.
yeah,
You
right.
don't have a choke, but, so you know, you
We
gotta.
do, but yes.
You gotta go a little bit. So, you know, and there's a way of driving that, and you learn how to do that by watching the meter.
All right, well, great.
Oh,
I gotta
okay.
go home and
Yeah.
put some balloons up. I have woodpeckers that are trying to attack my house.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I've got holes in my house,
Really?
right through the wood. My
So-
next door neighbor's getting them holes right in the side of the
What's
house.
the point, what's happening?
They have a nesting instinct. And so in my house, I never knew about this. The first time, it just happened 2 years ago. They actually made a hole. We hear this racket. We don't know what the heck it was. And I said, it's coming from over here because it echoes inside the house. We finally found a hole. Well, the darn thing made a hole right through the outside shingles, in through the next layer, and they right into my insulation. They were ready to build a nest in that point. And the hole was this big.
Did you talk to the town animal officer or something?
No, you can't do anything about it. They tell you to put balloons out there and wish them a happy birthday, and they never take it off.
They're afraid
You
of
have
balloons?
the mirror effect. So I have pieces of aluminum that I slip underneath the clapboards I have, just to cause a reflective process. And,
Can you kill the bird?
yeah, I did one. I just didn't like to do that. It's illegal.
Yeah, that's one.
That's so stupid. I mean, it just, they
Here's
keep
a
coming
point,
back.
here's a point, here's a point. I mean,
I got rabbits occupying my front yard. I have a natural garden, not big, but you know, islands of natural things where they can hide. Well, I have 2 or 3 rabbits occupying. You know, you're stepping on the pellets and everything else, and so I just shoot a BB gun, not to kill them, but just to scare them away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're so stupid, they keep on coming back.
yeah.
This is.
They like the red
chipmunks?
petunias.
I've never seen so many chipmunks around. I got holes all over my garden. This is kind of warming up. I don't know. They say they're having more sex than I have. And that's the worst thing about it. Did you see what they're doing there?
Hope we're not still being
Mike,
recorded.
Mike films everything.
Oh, he does.
Mike
That's
films
good.
everything,
This will be the unedited version.
yeah.
This is all you don't tell my wife.
All right, John, thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
We had a lot of fun.
All right.
If you ever
Let's
want to do something
disconnect.
again, we'll always be up for it, John. Maybe,
right.
maybe down the road. Okay, David, I'll take this here. Yeah, you get this. Oh, yeah.